William Scott's coffee was still warm when they came for him. He sat in his corner office on the 19th floor of Axiom Technologies, watching the morning sun cut through the San Francisco fog like a blade through silk. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the practiced rhythm of a man who'd written over 2 million lines of code in his 12-year tenure. The screensaver on his secondary monitor, a photo of his daughter Emma at her 8th grade science fair, smiled back at him, holding the robotics trophy he'd helped her build. Preparing and narrating this type of story takes a lot of time and effort. If you like the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch every story of our channel, turn on the bell icon. The knock came at exactly 8:47 a.m. William glanced at the digital clock on his desk, a habit born from years of logging every significant moment in his development journals. Time mattered in his world. Milliseconds could mean the difference between a successful transaction and a system failure. He'd built his entire career on precision. "Come in," he called, saving his work instinctively. Marcus Chen from HR entered first, followed by David Kellerman, the new chief technology officer who'd been hired 6 months ago from a rival firm. Marcus carried a manila folder, never a good sign, and David wore an expression that attempted sympathy but landed somewhere near indifference. William's stomach tightened. He'd survived 3 rounds of layoffs in the past 18 months, had even helped restructure departments to keep Axiom competitive. His team called him the anchor because he steadied every storm. His performance reviews were immaculate. He held 7 patents for the company's proprietary security systems. "William," Marcus began, settling into the chair across from his desk without being invited, "we need to talk about your position here." David remained standing, arms crossed, backlit by the window so his face fell into shadow. A power move William had seen 100 times in corporate negotiations. Make yourself imposing. Control the visual narrative. "My position?" William kept his voice steady, but his mind was already racing through possibilities. The Prometheus project, the massive enterprise security platform he'd architected, was 3 weeks from launch. Every major client was waiting for it. The code was elegant, unbreakable, revolutionary. He'd spent 4 years building it from concept to reality. He'd conceptualized it during a sleepless night after Emma's school had been hacked, student records stolen. He'd wanted to build something that made the digital world safer. "I'm not signing anything until I talk to a lawyer," William said quietly. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. David's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "William, let's be reasonable."
"I am being reasonable." William stood, his 6-foot frame unfolding with deliberate calm. "You're terminating me without cause, 3 weeks before a launch that represents 4 years of my life, the same launch that's supposed to close the DataCore deal, $600 million if I remember correctly from last month's board presentation." David's eyes flashed. "The DataCore acquisition will proceed as planned. We have a full team ready to manage the Prometheus deployment." William almost laughed. Almost. But the anger building in his chest wasn't funny. It was cold and clarifying. "A full team," he repeated. "Who? Jennifer from UI Design? Marco, who I've been training for 8 months and still can't debug complex encryption sequences? Or did you hire someone external? Someone who doesn't know that Prometheus has 47 interdependent security layers that require authorization protocols I designed specifically to prevent unauthorized access?" The silence that followed told William everything he needed to know. They thought they could simply take his work, copy his code, hand it to cheaper developers or, more likely, to David's former colleagues from his previous company. A technical theft dressed up as a corporate restructuring. "You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings," Marcus said, standing. "Security will escort you out. Your access credentials have already been revoked." He felt the words like a physical blow. Already revoked. They'd planned this before walking into his office, had probably been planning it for weeks. I need to document the transition. My team needs handoff protocols. The Prometheus system has safeguards that require... Your team has been briefed. Everything is handled. Nothing is handled. William's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Prometheus isn't just code you can copy-paste. It's an ecosystem. Every security protocol is interwoven with authentication sequences that require... We're not discussing technical details. This decision is final. Marcus, please have security standing by. William looked at Marcus, who couldn't meet his eyes. They'd worked together for a decade, had shared coffee breaks, complained about management decisions, celebrated team victories. Now, Marcus was a stranger, carrying out orders. 1 hour, Marcus repeated softly, then left. David lingered for a moment, silhouetted against the window. For what it's worth, William, this isn't personal. It's business. Your work here has been exemplary, but the company needs to move in a new direction, and that requires different leadership. Different leadership, William echoed, or cheaper labor. David's smile was thin. The technology sector is evolving. Adaptation is survival. Then he was gone, and William was alone in his office. The office he'd occupied for 7 years, where he'd celebrated promotions and worked through countless late nights, where he'd taken that video call from Emma's school play because he couldn't leave during the critical security patch. His hands were shaking. He sat back down, staring at the termination letter. The severance package was dated 2 weeks ago. They'd been planning this for at least that long, probably longer.
Excluded from. The way Jennifer and Marco had seemed uncomfortable around him lately, avoiding eye contact in the halls. They'd known. His own team had known he was being pushed out, and nobody had warned him. William's phone buzzed. A text from his ex-wife, Karen. Emma has an orthodontist appointment Thursday at 3. Can you take her? I have a deposition. Thursday at 3. He'd marked it in his calendar, had planned to leave early, had already scheduled his afternoon meetings around it. Now he had no meetings, no schedule, no office to leave from. He texted back, "I'll be there." His computer screen had gone dark. When he moved the mouse, a message appeared. Access denied. Credentials revoked. They'd locked him out of his own systems. William pulled out his personal laptop from his messenger bag, the one he used for side projects in Emma's school coding club that he volunteered with. He opened a secure terminal and typed a single command, accessing a private server he'd set up years ago. Not company property, his own infrastructure, built with his own resources, where he kept backup documentation of every major project, including Prometheus. The system responded immediately. All his architectural documents, all his authentication protocols, all the intricate security layers he designed, everything was still there, safely archived in his personal cloud storage. He hadn't violated any company policy. These were his notes, his documentation, his intellectual blueprints created during hundreds of hours of unpaid overtime at home. But there was something else, something he'd built into Prometheus during those late-night development sessions. A failsafe, a dead man's switch. When William had designed the core security system, he'd been paranoid about exactly this scenario. Not termination, but hostile takeover, corporate espionage, theft of proprietary systems. So he'd embedded an authentication protocol deep in the codebase, hidden in layers of encryption that looked like standard security features. Every 72 hours, Prometheus required his personal biometric authorization to maintain full operational status. Fingerprint, retinal scan, and a 16-digit code that existed nowhere except in his memory. Without that authorization, Prometheus would lock down automatically. Not crash, that would be too obvious, too easily traced back to sabotage. Instead, it would enter what he'd called guardian mode, shutting down all external access points while maintaining internal functionality. To anyone using the system, it would appear to be working perfectly. But the moment they tried to use it for an actual client, the moment they tried to use it for something like the data core acquisition, it would simply refuse to connect, and only he had the authorization to unlock it. William had built the failsafe as a security feature, a protection against theft. He documented it in his personal notes as a proprietary authentication system, something that would ensure Axiom couldn't simply hand his work to competitors or use it without proper licensing. He'd planned to remove it before the official launch, once proper legal protections were in place, once his patents were secured. But now, sitting in his office with an hour until security escorted him out like a criminal, he realized that failsafe was about to become very, very relevant. He checked the system clock. The last authorization had been 3 days ago, which meant Prometheus had 69 hours remaining before it locked down.
William closed his laptop and began packing his belongings. Personal photos of Emma, his collection of vintage programming manuals, the ridiculous world's best debugger mug she'd given him for Father's Day. He moved methodically, carefully, his mind working through calculations and consequences. They thought they could take his work, package it up, sell it, profit from 4 years of his innovation while offering him 6 months' salary and a handshake. By noon, they were going to learn exactly how wrong they were. Security arrived at 9:32 a.m. 2 guards William recognized, Paul and Sandra, who he'd chatted with countless mornings about basketball and weekend plans. Now they stood at his door with uncomfortable expressions, avoiding his gaze. "Mr. Scott," Paul said formally, the sudden last-name basis cutting like glass. "We're here to escort you from the building." William closed the last box of his belongings. 12 years reduced to 3 cardboard containers. "I'm ready." The walk through the 19th floor was a perp walk. Developers who'd worked under his mentorship suddenly found their screens fascinating. Jennifer, who he'd personally recommended for promotion just last month, pretended to be on a phone call. Marco stood at the window, his back turned, shoulders tight with guilt or relief. William couldn't tell which. Only one person met his eyes. Sarah Chen, the junior developer he'd hired straight out of Stanford 2 years ago. She stood in her cubicle doorway, tears streaming silently down her face. She mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." William nodded to her. She'd been like a little sister, constantly asking questions, eager to learn. He'd spent hundreds of hours teaching her not just code, but philosophy, how to build systems that were elegant and ethical, how to balance innovation with responsibility. The elevator ride down 19 floors felt eternal. Sandra shifted her weight from foot to foot. Paul stared at the descending numbers like they held the secrets of the universe. "This is wrong," Sandra finally whispered as they passed the 10th floor. "Everyone knows this is wrong." William said nothing. What was there to say? The lobby was bustling with Monday morning energy. New employees getting their badges. Vendors making deliveries. The receptionist, Dolores, who always had butterscotch candies and called him Sweetie, saw him with the security escort and her face crumpled. They walked him to his car in the parking garage. Paul helped him load the boxes into his trunk. When William reached to shake his hand, Paul pulled him into a quick, fierce hug. "You built this place," Paul said quietly. "Don't let them make you forget that." Then William was sitting in his car, alone, watching Paul and Sandra walk back into the building he'd helped construct from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar corporation. His phone rang, unknown number. "William Scott," he answered. "Mr. Scott, this is Rebecca Martinez from Data Core Industries. I'm calling regarding the Prometheus security demonstration scheduled for noon today." William's breath caught. The demonstration. The final presentation before Data Core signed the $600 million acquisition agreement. He'd been scheduled to lead it, to showcase every feature, to walk their security team through the architecture, to answer their technical questions. "Miss Martinez, I'm no longer employed by Axiom Technologies as of this morning. Silence on the line. Then, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was terminated at 8:47 a.m. I won't be presenting Prometheus today.
Mr. Scott, you're the chief architect. Your name is on every patent. Every technical document we've reviewed has your authorization. Datacore is prepared to sign a $600 million agreement based on systems you designed. Who's presenting in your place? I honestly don't know. More silence. William could hear typing in the background, voices conferring. Mr. Scott, I need to be frank with you. Datacore's interest in Axiom is specifically because of Prometheus. Your reputation in cybersecurity is impeccable. We've done extensive research on your work. If you're not part of the Axiom team anymore, she trailed off, the implication clear. That's a question for Axiom's leadership, William said carefully. Indeed it is. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Scott. And if I may speak personally, I'm sorry about your termination. The industry has enormous respect for your work. After she hung up, William sat in his car for a long moment. Then he checked his watch. 9:58 a.m. The Prometheus authorization would expire in 62 hours. The Datacore demonstration was scheduled for noon, 3 hours from now. He started his engine and drove home. His apartment was a 2-bedroom in the Mission District, close to Emma's school for custody weeks. The living room doubled as his home office. Dual monitors, a standing desk he'd built himself, walls covered with whiteboards full of equations and architectural diagrams. The morning light through the windows felt different now. Emptier. William made coffee and opened his laptop. He didn't access Axiom systems. That would be illegal, a violation of his termination agreement. But his personal documentation, his private research, his own intellectual notes, those belonged to him. He pulled up the Prometheus architecture files. The system was beautiful in its complexity, a digital fortress with 47 interlocking security layers. Each layer communicated with the others through encrypted channels, creating a web of protection that adapted and learned from every attempted breach. It was artificial intelligence applied to cybersecurity in ways that hadn't existed before. And buried in layer 34, disguised as a standard authentication protocol, was his failsafe. 3 lines of code that looked like routine security checks, but actually connected to a private server that required his biometric authorization every 72 hours. Without that authorization, Prometheus would enter Guardian mode. All external connections would terminate. The system would appear functional internally, but would refuse all deployment attempts. To anyone trying to demonstrate it to, say, a potential $600 million client, it would simply fail to connect. William hadn't built it as sabotage. He'd built it as protection, as insurance against exactly what happened this morning, the theft of his intellectual property dressed up as corporate restructuring. His phone rang again. This time he recognized the number. Marcus Chen. "William, we have a problem." "We?" "Please." Marcus's voice was strained. "The Datacore presentation is in 2 hours. David is trying to run the demonstration prep and Prometheus won't authenticate his credentials. Jennifer and Marco can't access the core systems either. Everything is locked." "Interesting. This is serious. Datacore's our biggest deal of the year. If we can't demonstrate Prometheus,
Then you'll lose $600 million because you terminated the only person who understands the system. Silence on the line. William could almost hear Marcus's mind working, understanding dawning. "You locked us out," Marcus said slowly. "You put some kind of kill switch in the code." "I put a security protocol in place to protect my intellectual property," William corrected. "Standard practice in proprietary software development. It's all documented in my personal research files." "William, please, think about the team. Think about Sarah. About everyone who's been working on this project. If this deal falls through, there will be layoffs. Real people will lose their jobs."
The words stung because they were probably true, but William thought about being escorted out of his office like a criminal, about 12 years dismissed with a manila folder and an hour's notice, about his daughter's orthodontist appointment on Thursday that he could now attend because he had no job, no income, no future at the company he'd helped build. "You should have thought about that before you fired me," William said quietly, and hung up. He spent the next hour documenting everything: screenshots of his termination letter, recordings of his phone calls, backups of his personal research files. If this was going to become a legal battle, he wanted every piece of evidence preserved. At 11:30 a.m., his phone exploded with activity. Texts from former colleagues, missed calls from David Kellerman, an email from Axiom's legal department demanding he restore system functionality immediately and threatening breach of contract lawsuits. He read the legal email twice. It claimed he had deliberately sabotaged company property and violated his employment agreement through malicious code. It demanded he report to the office immediately to rectify his actions. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. They'd fired him for no cause, locked him out of his systems, escorted him from the building, and now they wanted him to come fix their problem? At 11:47 a.m., his phone rang again. This time it was a number with a 650 area code, Palo Alto, where DataCore's headquarters were located. "Mr. Scott, this is Michael Chen, CEO of DataCore Industries. I apologize for calling your personal number. Ms. Martinez provided it. I understand you're no longer with Axiom Technologies." "That's correct, Mr. Chen. I'm currently sitting in a conference room at Axiom's offices with David Kellerman and several members of their executive team. We were scheduled to see a demonstration of Prometheus at noon. I'm being told there are technical difficulties that are preventing the system from operating. Mr. Kellerman suggested these difficulties might be related to your departure from Axiom Technologies." William chose his words carefully. "Prometheus has specific security protocols I designed to protect my intellectual property. Those protocols require authenticated access." Access that Axiom apparently doesn't have anymore? That would appear to be the case. He heard voices in the background, someone speaking urgently to Michael Chen. Then, "Mr. Scott, I'm going to be direct with you. DataCore has been negotiating this acquisition for 8 months. We've invested significant resources in due diligence. Our interest is specifically in Prometheus, in your work. Without a functioning demonstration, I'm not comfortable moving forward with a $600 million agreement." "I understand completely."
Mr. Kellerman is indicating that you violated your employment agreement, that you've sabotaged company systems. Is that accurate? No, sir. I built security protocols into Prometheus to protect against unauthorized use and intellectual property theft. Those protocols are part of my original design. They're documented in my personal research files. Axiom terminated my employment this morning without cause, 3 weeks before the planned launch, and is now discovering that my work has protections built into it. More background voices. Someone was arguing heatedly. William recognized David Kellerman's cadence. "Mr. Scott, would you be willing to meet with me? Just you and I, separate from Axiom." William's mind raced through the implications. "When?" "This afternoon. I'll have my car pick you up. Let's say 2 p.m. I'll be ready." After they hung up, William sat in his home office watching the clock tick toward noon. Somewhere across the city, in a conference room at Axiom Technologies, David Kellerman was probably having the worst day of his career. The $600 million deal was falling apart, the star product wouldn't function, and the only person who could fix it was the man they'd fired that morning. William thought about Sarah Chen's tears, about Paula's fierce hug, about Dolores's crumpled face, about all the good people who'd be hurt if Axiom collapsed. Then he thought about Emma's orthodontist appointment on Thursday, about making his next rent payment, about the mortgage on the small house he'd been saving to buy, the one with a yard where Emma could have a dog. At 12:03 p.m., his phone pinged with a news alert. Axiom Technologies faces technical difficulties during major client presentation. The unraveling had begun. Michael Chen's car arrived at precisely 2 p.m. A sleek black Tesla with a driver who introduced himself simply as James and offered William both coffee and water for the ride. The interior smelled of leather and possibility. They drove south toward Palo Alto, through traffic that thinned as they left the city. William watched San Francisco disappear in the rearview mirror and wondered if he was making a catastrophic mistake or the smartest move of his career. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing. 17 missed calls from Axiom, 12 text messages from Marcus, increasingly desperate, 3 emails from legal, each more threatening than the last, and 1 text from Sarah. Whatever you're doing, I hope it works. We all do. Datacorp's headquarters occupied a modern glass building in the Stanford Research Park, all clean lines and open spaces. James escorted William to a private conference room on the top floor, windows overlooking the bay, a table that could seat 20 but held only 2 chairs arranged conversationally at one end. Michael Chen stood when William entered. He was in his early 50s, silver threading through his black hair, wearing a casual button-down and jeans that probably cost more than William's entire wardrobe. But his handshake was firm, his eyes direct and intelligent. "Mr. Scott, thank you for coming. Please, sit. Can I get you anything?" "I'm fine, thank you." Michael settled into his chair with the ease of someone comfortable in his own power. "I'll be direct. It's the only way I know how to operate. This morning, I sat through the most embarrassing presentation I've witnessed in 20 years of business. David Kellerman spent 45 minutes explaining why the revolutionary security system I was promised doesn't actually work. He blamed unforeseen technical complications, he blamed sabotage by a disgruntled former employee, he blamed everything except what was obvious to everyone in that room, which was that Axiom fired the wrong person. Michael leaned forward. "I've read your patents, Mr. Scott, all 7 of them. I've reviewed your papers on adaptive security protocols I spent last night, after Ms. Martinez expressed concerns about your termination, researching your background. MIT graduate, top of your class, 12 years at Axiom, rising from junior developer to lead architect. No disciplinary issues, no performance problems. And this morning, they terminated you 3 weeks before their biggest product launch." William said nothing, waiting. "So I have questions. First and most important, did you sabotage Prometheus?" "No. I built security protocols into the system to protect against unauthorized use and intellectual property theft. Those protocols are part of the core architecture. They require authenticated access to prevent deployment by unauthorized parties." "Authorized by whom?" "By me, the chief architect and patent holder." Michael's expression didn't change, but William saw the flash of understanding in his eyes. "You built a dead man's switch into your own code." "I built protection. The technology sector is full of stories about developers whose work gets stolen, whose innovations get repackaged and sold by companies that push them out. I designed safeguards. Safeguards that now prevent Axiom from demonstrating the system that's supposed to be the centerpiece of our acquisition." "Yes." Michael stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "Here's my situation, Mr. Scott. Datacorp is a cybersecurity company. We protect financial institutions, healthcare systems, government contractors, organizations that cannot afford security breaches. Prometheus represents next-generation technology that would give us a substantial competitive advantage, but I'm not interested in acquiring a broken system or inheriting a legal nightmare." He turned back to William. "Tell me about the architecture. Not the technical details. I have engineers for that. Tell me what makes Prometheus special." William felt himself shift into the mode he loved most, explaining his work, sharing the vision that had driven him through thousands of hours of development. Traditional cybersecurity is reactive. A threat is detected and the system responds. But by then, damage is often done. Prometheus is predictive. It uses machine learning to anticipate attack patterns based on billions of data points. It doesn't just protect, it evolves. Every attempted breach makes it stronger, smarter. It's like an immune system for digital infrastructure. And the 47 security layers? Each layer handles a different aspect of protection: encryption, authentication, intrusion detection, data integrity, network monitoring. But they're not independent. They communicate through encrypted channels, sharing information, learning from each other. An attack on one layer informs all the others. It's a neural network of security. Michael was nodding slowly. And this authentication protocol you built in, the one causing problems for Axiom, where does it sit in the architecture? Layer 34. Deep enough that it's not obvious, integrated enough that removing it would destabilize the entire system. It's designed to look like standard security verification. But it's really a gatekeeper. It's really protection against exactly what Axiom did this morning: taking my work and trying to profit from it without my involvement. Michael returned to his seat. William, may I call you William? I'm going to share something with you in confidence. DataCore's board has authorized me to pursue acquisition of Prometheus, but not necessarily acquisition of Axiom Technologies. Do you understand the distinction? William's pulse quickened. You're saying you'd buy the technology without buying the company. I'm saying I'm interested in acquiring the rights to revolutionary cybersecurity systems designed by someone who clearly knows what he's doing. Whether that acquisition happens through Axiom or through alternative arrangements is something I'm willing to discuss. The implications crashed through William's mind like dominoes. You want to license Prometheus directly from me. I want to explore all options, including the possibility of hiring you to continue development under DataCore's umbrella, with proper recognition, proper compensation, and proper legal protections for your intellectual property. William sat back in his chair, his mind racing. Axiom would sue. They'd claim Prometheus as their property, that I developed it on company time with company resources. Did you? It's complicated. I did initial development at Axiom, yes, but I spent thousands of unpaid hours working from home. I used my own equipment for major breakthroughs. The core concepts came from my personal research, and I hold the patents. Patents Axiom licensed but doesn't own. Michael smiled. Then it sounds like you need a very good lawyer. I happen to know several. They talked for another hour. Michael asked detailed questions about development timelines, resource allocation, patent status. He wanted to understand not just the technology, but the legal landscape, the intellectual property boundaries, the potential vulnerabilities in any arrangement. By 4 p.m., when James drove William back to San Francisco, he had a business card with Michael Chen's personal cell phone number and an offer to consider. DataCore would fund a legal review of William's intellectual property rights in Prometheus. If the review confirmed that William had legitimate claims to the technology, DataCore would negotiate a licensing agreement directly with him. The compensation being discussed started at $15 million, with royalties on every implementation. William's hands were shaking as he entered his apartment. His phone showed 32 missed calls from Axiom. He ignored them all and instead called his brother, Marcus Scott. Not Marcus Chen from HR, but his actual brother, Marcus Scott, a corporate attorney in Los Angeles. Will, everything okay? You never call on Monday afternoons. I need a lawyer. Specifically, I need an intellectual property attorney who specializes in technology and isn't afraid of going up against major corporations. Jesus, Will, what happened? William told him everything: the termination, the locked system, the failed demonstration, the meeting with Michael Chen. His brother listened without interrupting, and he could hear him typing notes. Okay, Marcus said when William finished. First, don't talk to anyone at Axiom without representation. Second, don't touch their systems or your code. Nothing that could be construed as sabotage or breach of contract. Third, I know someone perfect for this. Danielle Brooks, she specializes in exactly this kind of case. She's expensive, but if DataCore is funding your legal review, cost isn't an issue. How expensive? $800 an hour. But well, if what you're telling me is accurate, if you really do have legitimate IP claims on Prometheus, this could be worth millions, tens of millions. Danielle doesn't lose cases like this. They talked for another 30 minutes. Marcus asking detailed questions about employment contracts, patent filings, development timelines. By the time William hung up, his brother had already emailed him Danielle Brooks's contact information and a list of documents together. At 5:47 p.m., exactly 9 hours after his termination, William's doorbell rang. He checked the security camera on his phone and saw Marcus Chen from HR standing in the hallway, alone, looking exhausted and miserable. William considered not answering, but curiosity and 12 years of working together won out. He opened the door. "I'm not supposed to be here," Marcus said immediately. "If David knew I came, I'd be fired too. But Will, I need to talk to you, please." William stepped aside, letting him in. Marcus looked around the apartment, the whiteboards full of equations, the dual monitors, the evidence of a life built around code and problem solving. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. This morning was wrong. The way they did it was wrong. The timing was wrong. All of it. But you did it anyway. I had orders. From David, from the CFO, from legal. They said you were being let go. I needed to deliver the termination. I'm HR. That's my job. Your job is also to protect employees from wrongful termination." Marcus flinched. "I know. I fought against it, Will. In meetings, I argued that letting you go before the launch was insane, but they overruled me. David convinced the executives that your salary was too high, that we could bring in contractors for a fraction of the cost, and that your leadership wasn't aligned with the company's new direction. My leadership built Prometheus. I know. Everyone knows. The entire development team is furious. Sarah threatened to quit. Jennifer actually quit, handed in her resignation at lunch. 3 others are updating their resumes." Marcus rubbed his face. "The company is falling apart, Will. The DataCore deal is dead. Our stock dropped 11% this afternoon when news leaked about the failed demonstration. And David is telling everyone this is your fault, that you sabotaged the system out of spite." William walked to his whiteboard, staring at the Prometheus architecture diagram he'd drawn from memory that afternoon. "I didn't sabotage anything. I built security protocols into my own work, protocols that Axiom would have benefited from if they'd treated me with basic professional respect. Can you unlock it?" The question hung in the air. Can I? Will I? That's a different question. "What do you want?" I almost laughed. "I want 12 years of loyalty to mean something. I want recognition for building systems that made Axiom billions in revenue. I want not to be thrown away like defective equipment 3 weeks before my greatest achievement goes live." "I can't give you that. Nobody can give you that now." "No, I agree. You can't." Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is from David. It's an offer. Full reinstatement, raised to $350,000, VP title, guaranteed position through Prometheus launch. All you have to do is unlock the system and sign an NDA about this morning's termination." William took the envelope, but didn't open it. "He's trying to buy my silence and my expertise." "He's trying to save the company, Will. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But there are hundreds of people who depend on Axiom for their livelihoods. If the company goes under because the DataCore deal falls through, all of them suffer. Not David. He'll land somewhere else. Not the executives. They have golden parachutes. The engineers, the support staff, the people like Dolores in reception. They're the ones who'll be hurt." It was a good argument, an effective argument, and it might have worked if William hadn't spent the afternoon with Michael Chen, if he hadn't glimpsed a future where his work was valued properly, where his intellectual contributions weren't just acknowledged but celebrated. "Tell David I'll think about it," William said. "That's not good enough. He needs an answer tonight. Then he should have thought about that before firing me this morning." William walked to the door and opened it. "I'll think about it, Marcus. That's all I'm offering." After Marcus left, William sat at his computer and pulled up his personal documentation of Prometheus. Every line of code, every architectural decision, every late-night breakthrough. It was all there, time-stamped and backed up. His intellectual property created through thousands of hours of unpaid overtime, built on concepts he'd developed independently. Axiom had the implementation, but William had the knowledge, the vision, the fundamental understanding that made Prometheus revolutionary. At 8 p.m., his phone rang. Emma. "Dad? Mom said you're not working at Axiom anymore. Are you okay?" William closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the day settle on his shoulders. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just some changes happening." "Good changes or bad changes?" He thought about the termination letter, about Michael Chen's offer, about the future splitting into two distinct paths before him. "I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do." "I know you will. You're the smartest person I know." She paused. "I'm still proud of you, Dad, even if Axiom was dumb enough to let you go." After they hung up, William sat in the gathering darkness of his apartment, not bothering to turn on lights. Emma's words echoed in his mind. She was proud of him, not because of his title or his salary, but because of who he was. At 9:30 p.m., he opened David Kellerman's envelope. The offer was generous on paper: $350,000 salary, VP title, stock options. But buried in the legal language was a comprehensive NDA, a clause transferring all intellectual property rights to Axiom in perpetuity, and a non-compete agreement that would prevent him from working in cybersecurity for 5 years. They wanted to own him completely. William took a photo of every page, then tore the offer in half. At 10 p.m., he called Danielle Brooks, the attorney his brother had recommended. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and alert despite the late hour. "Mr. Scott, your brother briefed me. I've been waiting for your call." They talked for 90 minutes. Danielle asked pointed questions about patent filings, development timelines, employment contracts. She wanted copies of everything: his personal documentation, his termination letter, his communication with Michael Chen. "Here's my assessment," she said finally. "Axiom has a claim to the implementation of Prometheus, the code you wrote on company time, but you hold the patents. You developed the core concepts independently, and this authentication protocol you built in, that's going to be interesting. If you documented it as a security feature in your personal research before implementing it, that's your intellectual property." "I did. It's all time-stamped in my private repositories." "Then we have leverage. Axiom can't use Prometheus without your cooperation, and they can't force you to provide that cooperation. They terminated you without cause, which means they voided any obligation you had to support post-employment transitions. And if Datacore wants to license the technology directly from you," she paused. "This could get very lucrative for you, Mr. Scott, but it's going to get ugly first. Axiom will fight. They'll claim ownership, accuse you of sabotage, tie you up in litigation. Can they win? Not if your documentation is as thorough as you say, but they can make it expensive and time-consuming, which is where Datacore's offer to fund your legal costs becomes crucial." William thought about Sarah's tears, about Paul's hug, about all the good people at Axiom who'd be caught in the crossfire. What if I just walked away, unlocked the system, took their severance, moved on? Then you'd be giving up millions of dollars and validating their right to steal your work. Is that what you want? No, it wasn't. "Let's proceed," William said. The next morning, Danielle filed a formal claim asserting William's intellectual property rights in Prometheus. Simultaneously, Michael Chen's legal team announced that Datacore was suspending acquisition negotiations with Axiom Technologies pending resolution of intellectual property disputes. Axiom stock plummeted 23%. By noon, William had received 17 voicemails from Axiom's legal department, each more threatening than the last. By 2 p.m., they'd filed a lawsuit claiming breach of contract and sabotage. By 5 p.m., Danielle had filed a countersuit alleging wrongful termination and IP theft. The tech press picked up the story within hours. Software architects Killswitch torpedoes $600 million deal. David versus Goliath in Silicon Valley IP battle. Did Axiom Technologies steal from its own employee? Sarah texted him, "Team is behind you. We all know the truth." The legal battle stretched across 3 months. Depositions, document discovery, expert witnesses. Danielle was relentless, building a case brick by brick. She showed that 60% of Prometheus's core concepts originated in Williams' personal research. She demonstrated that the authentication protocol was documented in his private repositories months before implementation. She brought in former colleagues who testified about Williams' unpaid overtime, his independent development work, his intellectual contributions beyond his job requirements. Axiom's lawyers tried to claim everything William created was company property, but they couldn't explain why they'd terminated their chief architect 3 weeks before launch. They couldn't justify revoking his credentials without transition protocols. They couldn't account for the suspicious timing of David Kellerman's arrival from a competitor. In month 4, Axiom's board fired David Kellerman. In month 5, they settled. William retained full patent rights to Prometheus. Axiom received a limited license to use the existing implementation for current clients only. No new development, no expansion, no transfer of rights. They paid William $8.5 million in damages and back compensation. DataCore signed a separate agreement directly with William. $15 million upfront, 5% royalty on every implementation, position as chief security architect with full creative control. On his first day at DataCore, William sat in an office overlooking the bay and thought about the coffee that had still been warm that morning at Axiom, about security guards escorting him out, about thinking his career was over at 8:47 a.m. His phone buzzed. "Emma, Mom showed me the article about you in TechCrunch. You're kind of famous, Dad." He smiled and pulled up his computer. He had work to do. Prometheus 2.0 wasn't going to build itself, but this time, his name would be on it. His vision would guide it. And his daughter would see that standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, even when the odds seem impossible, sometimes leads exactly where you need to go. Sometimes the system that locks them out is the same one that sets you free. If you enjoyed this story of technical justice and corporate reckoning, I'd love to have you join our community. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story about underdogs who refuse to be underestimated, brilliant minds who fight back against the systems that tried to break them, and the sweet, satisfying moments when integrity wins over greed.